Skylar Hurwitz is running in Pennsylvania's 1st District. And Skylar, Pennsylvania is an interesting place to be a progressive candidate. Welcome to the conversation.
Thanks so much for having me, Mark.
You're a conservationist, which I love already. Tell us a little about you.
Excellent. So my whole experience was really built around solar and environmental conservation projects. I worked with this organization called the National Association of Regional Councils in DC, and they basically are where all the local governments and regional governments go to when they're trying to get the federal government to fund local programs like parks and rec or green infrastructure, just infrastructure at large. So they were working on cutting the cost of solar. So I worked there for a little while. And then I worked at Conservation International, which is really an excellent organization doing work all around the world that stemmed out of the Nature Conservancy. And I was managing a $40 million portfolio for them, where I would basically go to places like my portfolio is mainly Southeast Asia, Western Africa, and Southern Africa. So it's quite a wide geography, but it was excellent to go and actually meet organizations on the ground, meet these small nonprofits that were trying to learn how to basically manage an organization, because they knew how to do the work on the ground, but they didn't know how to get the funding and track it properly and report back to big donors, because we were, European Union and World Bank and MacArthur Foundation funded, so we needed to really prove the money was being used properly. So that was kind of my job, was to get in there on the ground and help ensure that these nonprofits could really prove what they were doing. And it was an excellent opportunity for me to see the reality of the climate crisis on the ground. And that's really what sparked my desire to get into politics at this moment, because I did not see anyone speaking to these issues given really the current level of the crisis.
I love that you say that you were there and saw it firsthand, because that is what struck me about those places you mentioned. They really are in the front line of the climate crisis.
Absolutely. I mean, I got, I'll say I'm fortunate enough to have been able to have gotten a scuba license during some of that time. And so seeing some of the reefs that people had been to in the past, seeing the sort of health of that was eye-opening for me, to not be looking at just some random photos or a video on Twitter or some news article, but to actually be there, seeing it with my own eyes. So it was definitely eye-opening, and it's something where, I had some of the people I was working with had done some of the original biodiversity studies in places like Cambodia when it first opened up after the Vietnam War. And, that is something where there's there are entire forests, 8-hour drives worth of a forest that are gone. And so you just see that happening around the world, and it really makes you think, where is the United States leadership when it's needed? Why are we busy in endless wars and spending our trillions of dollars on that when we could be having such a positive impact on the world if we decided to pursue this, diplomatic and kind of green alternative path? I just don't understand why our politicians aren't taking that step forward. And I think that's why we need a fresh generation of leadership in power in Washington.
Well, here. And you point to Cambodia. I was there as well, and not for as long, clearly, as you were there. But I mean, you see some of these environmental regions in environmental free fall. And it's scary. And you're right, the US could make such a difference in a role of leadership, because we have the economic leverage to make it happen. So how does all that play in Pennsylvania?
It's an interesting play in Pennsylvania. You're right to be on the edge of your seat there. I guess it's an environment where people are, particularly in my district, very much concerned about the environment. I mean, last time around, a Democrat ran who was on a pretty strong environmental message, and he did quite well. The issue was really that this was a multimillionaire self-funding his campaign against a pretty popular incumbent. And so the message was strong, but just I think the personality didn't quite land with the people the way it needed to. They didn't see him as one of them. And so I do believe that this year, to have someone who's born and raised here, I'm the only candidate in the race, well, at least in the Democratic primary, that went to our public schools here. I'm a very down-to-earth kind of guy on that front, but I've definitely been pushing the bounds of what I can do as a young person in my career. That's something that I'm very proud of, and I think that this district would be proud to have representing it, because it's just a very real story, very homegrown kind of story.
And this district is one that went for Hillary in the last election. Is that what happened?
Yeah, so it was a really interesting situation there. So Hillary won at the presidential level, but Brian Fitzpatrick, the Republican incumbent, won at the congressional level. And then in 2018, I think there were only 3 or 4 districts in the state of Pennsylvania where that happened, where there was that presidential and congressional blue-red split. And then in 2018, those others were wiped out, and this remained as the only one seat that had gone blue for Hillary that still is red, even after those midterms. So this is really a seat that was early on a toss-up. Since the local party made their endorsement of my opponent, it's moved into the leaning Republican category. But I've got a strong grassroots organization forming here on the ground with the Our Revolution Pennsylvania endorsement and a few other ones that could be coming quite soon, it looks like. So that's really shaking up how they usually do their political campaigning around here. And I'm confident that that's going to bring us some success when it comes to the April 28th primary.
Isn't it interesting that you are against a Republican incumbent? I'm sure that all of these things, even the brief list that we've touched on, this list is not something I would imagine that your Republican incumbent opponent is about in any way.
You know, he's done an excellent job of branding himself as this independent voice. He's really seen as a moderate to many people, despite the fact that he is really voting party line on the important issues. But he has done, he's the younger brother of a far more popular congressperson who unfortunately passed away recently. And I think that's really what's played to his benefit because he's really tricked people into thinking he is a major environmentalist. He's tricked people into thinking he is very much in favor of everyone's health care, even as we're stripping that and defunding it, and that he's in favor of our public schools, even as our public schools are being really just drained of financing by charter schools in the area. So that's something that's an interesting situation for us to be in, and it's one where I think having a progressive candidate that really has an alternative vision of where we're going to go with public schools and with higher education and trade school and opening up our economy really to the everyday people once again and making it work for them again. That's something that's really going to resonate with people because they've just felt left behind around here.
You know, Skylar, you talk about these things and these are all laudable goals, but one of the things that I'm impressed with is that you really have pointed to ways to pay for these things that you indicate are your priorities.
That was my goal coming in. I didn't want to launch a congressional campaign with a bunch of policy statements on a website that you could go and look at and say, oh, sounds like a nice politician. I wanted to give everyone the real plan of what are the price tags going to be. You know, I had the local newspaper earlier, I was in on their podcast, the Courier Times, and they're giving me a lot of trouble. I was explaining how I wanted to pay for things, what the cost would be, and they're yelling at me, Bernie Sanders last week said he doesn't know how much it's all going to cost. He doesn't know how much it's all going to cost. And it was just kind of an intense moment of, I get that you may have your preconceived notions around certain presidential candidates, but yeah, my campaign's been based very much around that substance just from day one so that everyone can really feel that the fair tax platform will work for them.
Yeah, you take that incoming fire because you're a progressive candidate and you were inspired sort of by Bernie Sanders. So they come at you the way they come at Bernie, but you really have the nuts and bolts and X's and O's or whatever parallel you want, however you want to describe it. You have that figured out for your fair tax platform and beyond.
I appreciate that. And that's something that I think that, again, the constituents around here are ready for that type of honesty when it comes to policy. They appreciate understanding that they won't have those out-of-pocket expenses or premiums or deductibles or co-pays with their health insurance under Medicare for All. They understand that it'll be a 4% payroll tax, but they're able to do the math on what that'll mean for their premium, their monthly costs. Is that a savings or not? And for most people here, it's a substantial savings, 30-40%. So this is something where I think it's very popular around here to go straight to the outcomes, straight to the reality of the situation. And I think that's what people are hungry for, is someone who just is done with the labels of left and right around here and is just more concerned about helping everyday families live the lives they should be able to live. And with the coronavirus, really, right now, it's something where we should have paid sick leave and we should have Medicare for All so that nobody's afraid of getting tested and nobody's afraid of staying home. But that kind of, I could go off on that on a whole another rant, but that's something that's really concerning to me right now, is that we truly do need, especially at a moment like this, someone who is down in Washington ready to fight for paid sick leave and for Medicare for All, because we're seeing what could potentially happen. Hopefully things are under control, but so far, certain parts of the world, we're seeing it have a devastating impact. And so I hope that we can move towards a society that really does put people's health and well-being first.
No, that's just so well said. I mean, health-related issues and healthcare-related issues are front and center right now. We only have a few seconds left. I'm just curious about your congressional district, Pennsylvania's 1st district. Just give us a snapshot of that district and like what it consists of, what it's made up of.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity to do that. So we're just north of Philadelphia. This is all of Bucks County and a sliver of Montgomery County that includes Lansdale. That's the part of Montgomery is maybe 10% of the district. So it's relatively cohesive, but it's right along the Delaware River, along New Jersey as well, bordering it to one side. So it's a pretty diverse district. You could probably almost divide it up into 3 sub-districts because it's got the kind of more urban feeling, closer to Philadelphia, more suburban feeling, and then a pretty rural, even farmland type feeling in the northern part of the district. So it's quite large.
And so you have to hope that that message resonates with enough people across that diverse group. And I wish we could continue to talk to you. I just think, I love that you're a conservationist. I love that you're a small business owner. You have a history in the region. I wish you the very best of luck. Let's show everybody SkylarForCongress.com. If you want more information on Skylar Hurwitz, it's there, SkylarForCongress.com. And donation, of course, actblue.com/donate/Skylar PA-01. The volunteer, SkylarForCongress.com/get-involved. But it's all there at SkylarForCongress.com. Skylar Hurwitz, good luck, and thanks for visiting with us on The Conversation.
Thanks so much, Mark. Have a great night.
2 easy ways to follow the Young Turks. One is hit the subscribe button down below, then you're a TYT subscriber. And second is ring the bell. And when you do that on YouTube, you're notified of our videos.